this case ought to have been dispensed before the expiration of the state of emergency. But why did the courts allow it to linger up until the state of emergency expired and the governor was called back? What was the intention of the court in delaying this case? They say justice delayed is justice denied. Well, let's have your broad reaction to all of this.
Well, let me start from the last question you posed, that why the delay? Well, justice delayed, justice denied, yes. But that is to the extent to which evidence before the court are marshaled, and it is the prerogative of the judge to make sure that he or she is satisfied with all the evidence before him or her before adjudicating on or dispensing justice. So for me, it is beyond me to say the judge delayed in dispensing justice or otherwise. Now, to the judgment from Justice Omotosho, it is clear that she said this is a constitutional matter, and the president relied on the constitution to invoke this emergency rule. And it is in public domain. You don't have to be a lawyer to know that constitutional matters are vested in the Supreme Court. Now, another thing again, even at our elementary law classes as a communication student, we were told that for you to even claim damage to your reputation and seek damages, you must have been injured. And that is why if you abuse a group, the group cannot sue you for libel. It has to be individual suing you for libel. So if today I come and say journalists are thieves, you can't go to court and say, because you are a journalist, you want to sue me for calling you a thief. Because I only call the group a thief. And to that extent, what that judge said is there was nothing to suggest that you are personally injured by the invocation of emergency rule. And that there was no, when you are seeking relief, there was no part of it that said that you are acting on behalf of the good people of Rivers State. So,
would it have made
from the layman point of view,
would it have made a difference? Sorry, please, allow me to butt in. Would it have made a difference if there had been some sort of signature from the people of the state saying that we are part of this suit? Would that have made a difference in the case?
It may not make much difference, because that's not the only fault line in that judgment. You understand what I'm saying? In fact, the critical part of it, which I expected that the lawyers would have taken cognizance of, is the fact that matters like that rest squarely with the Supreme Court. They should have gone to Supreme Court to challenge it, and not a federal high court.
But I think the case is I think someone also instituted a case in that regard at the Supreme Court level.
So maybe you can wait for
that one.
Yes.
But you know, the courts also said, what impact will this judgment have now on future governments?
You're talking about precedents.
At the center, yes, where you can hold on to emergencies and say, okay, because there is an emergency, I want to impose a state of, because there's a problem, either, actual problem or thought out one. You say you want to impose a state of emergency. Will this judgment embolden future governance at the
No,
same time?
I think the lesson to be learned here is the fact that on the part of the lawyers, they made some mistakes in the course of asking for relief. And going forward, if there is a similar incident like this in future, the lawyers know where to go. And I think the other lawyer that went straight to the Supreme Court understood better than the lawyers of these 5 people. Secondly, I am also worried that victory for the federal government on this matter would actually embolden another president that want to impose
That's the question I'm asking, really.
such emergency rule. And it sets governors on edge, knowing where to tread, when to tread, and why to tread in the course of administering their states. So unlike before, when you have that emergency rule that survived has technically removed executive from governors. Because when you say somebody is executive governor, he has all the powers to administer his state without looking at his back for anything that could come. But right now, it clearly shows if it goes on to Supreme Court and the judgment validates the position of the federal government in imposing emergency rule, people would definitely abuse. It's just like when the electoral law was amended and they said you can defect on the premise that there is crisis in your party.
Exactly.
As if politicians cannot orchestrate crisis to be able to defect.
Interesting.
They didn't look at that. They were just looking at, okay, let's make it fine. Let's not just kill the politician who want to go to another party. But with stringent rule, that was what ran through their mind. But they didn't factor the ingenuity of Nigerians, particularly politicians, in circumventing the law when they made that provision. Today, at the drop of a hat, a politician can switch from one party to the other and still come back to the first party he left, and so on and so forth.
Thank you so much.
So sometimes it's also instructive now that we need to be clear and look at all the parameters before you do any amendment to the law, so that people will not circumvent this law and you will not be able to come back in the immediate to revoke that amendment. Okay. And the amendment stays.
All right, then.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fanimo, for your submission. Let's get to your contribution. Elder Yusuf Solomon Dambaki, good morning. If you can hear me, good to have you join today's conversation. I would like you to unmute your device if you can hear me, please.
I'm listening.
Thank you so much. Now let's get your opinion on this, please. What do you make of the fact that Justice Motosho dismisses the case before him against the president and the declaration of the state of emergency in River State? And one of the things he cited is that the people who brought the case before him does not really have what it takes to do that because they're not speaking on behalf of the people of River State, and also saying that it's only the Supreme Court that have the right to adjudicate over such case. Please help us work around this, and what does this really portend for Nigerian rule of law, given the fact that this case was before him, even before the expiration of the 6-month suspension given, and after the suspension was what he came up to give this particular verdict.
Okay, good morning, listeners, once again. I think you deliberately mentioned the name of Justice Motosho. I wanted to avoid talking about his person and focusing on the judgment, but if you must look at the cases he presided over and the judgments he has passed in the past, you will know that they are highly controversial judgments. He is somebody I would describe as an expert in taking advantage of the technicalities of Nigerian law to give judgment in favor of the executive, always. So, but I think just like in the political cycle, where the immediate last speaker just spoke, we have people everywhere that try to sabotage or manipulate the system in their favor to really get what they want. I will describe first Nigerian politicians and those in the helm of affairs today to be products of moral decadence in the society. You see, the law cannot correct an immoral behavior of a person, no matter what you do. An immoral person will manipulate his ways, no matter the new law that you bring. So, so today, to be deviant of yesterday in different families, where you have one child or two that is a deviant in a family, happen to find his way into the political cycle. So no matter the laws made, they find a way of manipulating it.
Right.
So, but looking at the judgment in River State and its effect on the system, you see, Nigeria, this is a federal system, and it is expected that each arm of government, particularly the states and the federal government, are independent. They are autonomous, not but complete autonomy. So a state like the executive governor is not supposed to be controlled in any way by the president. Very, very expert. So I think what we had in River State does not fall into the category of that extreme case that needed the rod. We've seen it happen, and it has set a precedent.
All right.
And it's going to affect our democracy in the long run, because subsequent presidents will also take advantage of that and make reference to this one.
So you don't think at this point that the case, before the 40 other cases, that we're going to get something different? I'm talking about different judgments. Recall that even PDP also have a case on this particular one on the floor of the Supreme Court. Are we not going to see any changes at all? Are you saying must follow a particular route?
Sorry, I missed that. I didn't get you clearly.
All right, I say that we have other 40 lawsuits to this regard. Even the PDP also decided to get to Supreme Court, also talking of challenging the suspension of the governor of River State and even the House of Assembly members. Are we not going to see any changes in the verdict? Are we not trying to preempt the court at this point in time, but are we not going to see any change? Must they follow the same route, judging in favor of a particular person, a particular set?
In PAA, dead on arrival, even if you make it 80, not 40, you may have a dissenting voice among the judges if it gets to Supreme Court. But at the end of the day, majority are going to dance to the tune of the executive, because it's like everybody now who works in the judiciary, before you even get to that position, you must be a certified loyalist of the party in power. So all the judges, except very few, are certified loyalists. It's a system. Even from getting admission into law school, there is somebody somewhere that influenced your admission to become a lawyer, and then when you emerge, there is a way, somebody somewhere that decide whether you go to the bar or to the bench, and that somebody is one politician somewhere that will keep controlling your growth until you get to the Supreme Court. So they are not as independent as we think, not just in terms of resources, but in terms of their growth, of how they got to where they are.
Okay.
There is a politician somewhere that played a role. So they are not independent.
All right, then. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Elder Yusuf Dambaki. Well, let's take this to Benin, where we have Comrade Christopher Ojiekere. And Comrade, a lot of Nigerians have been reacting on social media to this. And well, first off, what are your thoughts? Did you expect anything different? Now, when you respond to that, let's then talk about the reaction of Nigerians on social media. Some Nigerians have said that a lot of Nigerians are actually saying that the Supreme Court cannot be trusted. Supreme Court judges cannot be honest when it comes to because the executive butters their bread. How detrimental can that mindset, that ideology go in terms of Nigerians having their hope that the court is, the last hope of the ordinary man?
All right. For me, as far as that kind of mindset is concerned, I'm a strong advocate against it. You see, I don't believe in dividends. I don't believe in surrendering your sovereignty as long as you have your voice, thanks to VOP. As a Nigerian, you should continue to press against the system, continue to test the system, continue to insist that the system works. If you give up to these forces that want to jeopardize our democracy or capture us the way they think they have done, then we are just going to be lame ducks, sitting for them to react upon us whenever they want to. We have to resist whatever we think is against democracy, whatever we think is against the rule of law. And to that extent, the institutions that we have in place, the courts inclusive, that we can seek redress in and out whenever we have this kind of issues, we must test that to the final conclusion. Irrespective of the very poor judgment of Justice James Omotosho, I still think that those who took it to the right...
Why do you think it was a poor judgment? I mean, he cited the Constitution. The president invoked the relevant aspect of the Constitution in carrying out the state of emergency. That's where he cited. Why do you think it was a poor judgment?
I'm not a lawyer, but if you have a court judge telling citizens that they do not have local standard to bring to court cases that they think have affected their fundamental human rights or have affected the franchise that they freely delivered when they voted for their governor, I think that's self-defeatist.
Interesting you took us down that path. I mean, I'm sorry I'm butting in at this point, but that was a question I was going to ask you as well. These individuals are not part of the National Assembly, the State Assembly. These individuals were not prodded by Governor Siminalayi Fubara. The governor himself wasn't part of the suit. What does that make the courts when the court said, look, because you are not active participants in the issues in Rivers State or any other state, you cannot present this sort of case in court. You don't have the legal standing or the local standi to do so. What does that make the courts? Does that make the courts a passive bystander in cases like this? And how will this encourage or discourage other Nigerians from, questioning issues like this one?
Well, for Justice Omotosho to say that, it simply means that the kind of mentality the status quo wants to achieve what I call the privatized mentality, where we all submit to Kabiesi's discretion and Kabiesi's rules of the game. Justice Omotosho has become a tragic victim of that. Justice Omotosho has forgotten that what the plaintiff brought to court are matters of public concern and matters of public office. And so he's seeking that they should show evidence of private hurt or harm. Even by his statement, he implicated himself when he said they have not suffered above other citizens of Rivers State, which itself concedes that they have had some suffering, just that they have not been able to prove that they have suffered more than the other citizens. Now, whatever degree of suffering that they have or have had is enough for them to go to court and seek redress. And that's the whole purpose of court, to interpret whether the actions of the president and to what extent that actions have harmed these people. But he is saying and predicated his judgment on the fact that they have not suffered above other citizens in Rivers State, but they have suffered some consequences, and that is why they are there. Now, again, Justice Omotosho was not able to prove to us, because since he has taken the position of the advocate of the action, he didn't prove to us how that we saw in public that constitutional, constitutional steps were followed by the president before he arrived at the state of emergency. We understand that the president has to gazette, that state of emergency, and then submit it to the National Assembly, both the Senate and the lower chambers, and those ones will call for a hearing and then sit over it and then, approve the actions of the president. Do we have any video clips of that kind of sitting taking place? Do we have any proof that the president did that? We do not have that. And that's one of the reasons why the people felt that the president has not followed constitutional, stipulations for him to declare a state of emergency. But Omotosho became an advocate of the president and of the action rather than looking at judgment. And after he has judged the case, which he thinks he doesn't have jurisdiction over, he finally told them that the case as constituted will be settled at the Supreme Court. But you have sat down and you have already judged the case. So the point is, what we saw there is what I may refer to as judicial tyranny from Justice Omotosho. Justice Omotosho, is the one that does not have the local standard to judge the case the way he has judged it. Every citizen that feels offended has the court to go and seek redress. So he shouldn't ban Nigerians from taking cases to court. The court is there to interpret the laws. And if the citizens have, a different view from the view of the president who carried out what we think up to now is an executive fiat and an autocratic action, the court is there to judge it. So he shouldn't discourage Nigeria from exercising their local standard, whenever they feel, that they have been offended. That is what the court is there for, to seek redress at.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Comrade Christopher Ojekere.